Have you ever chunked a chip or pitch? Of course you have. Everyone who's ever played golf has. But here's the real question. Do you find yourself counting strokes you throw away from poor chips and pitches after your round? Maybe it's chunk chips or bladed chips or leaving those chips and pitches too far from the hole too often. You just know you waste too many shots around the green. If that sounds like you, then pay attention because over the next few minutes, we're going to introduce you to a brand new club that we believe will put an end to your chipping and pitching frustrations once and for all. Yes, you heard that right. No more hitting chips and pitches fat. No more hitting them thin because you're overcompensating. And no more pulling out that putter from way off the green just to avoid the chip yip. If you're a golfer who struggles with confidence and consistency from 40 yards and in, then this new club is going to become your deadly accurate go-to solution for a better short game. Introducing the brand new Square Strike Wedge. The Square Strike Wedge award-winning design team wanted to engineer a club that makes frustrating chip and pitch shots as easy to master as a gimme putt. A club that would eliminate inconsistent contact and allow you to simply and easily hit chips and pitches closer to the hole and set you up for makeable putts. So they did, and the results were astounding.
It totally blows my mind how easy it is to use the Square Strike. It's a whole different animal to actually be just off the green and think, I could make this. Instead of, I just get as close to the hole as I can. When I went to the Square Strike, all of a sudden things smoothed out. I was more confident. The balance was just right. The face was lined up right. And everything felt comfortable, like I've been using that club forever.
Well, the Square Strike results speak for themselves. You cannot hit this club fat. You will never chunk a ball. And that's important, especially for the middle handicaps and the higher handicaps. So I think it's a game improvement club. But even for a 7 handicap, I'm going to get one.
I hit a little heavy with the Square Strike, but it wasn't chunky at all. So it felt really natural. You really can't chunk it out with the Square Strike.
The consistency of the Square Strike was really good, and it was impressive for using it the first time. Pretty tight shot pattern, probably better than what I've been doing with my current wedge, even after I've been working on it a bit. As I hit 10 or 15 shots and started to get a little bit comfortable with it, the shot and the swing got to be really repeatable, and it drives up your level of confidence about getting it close to the hole or holing it.
It was a lot of fun using the Square Strike. Unlike chipping with a wedge, I was able to think about putting the ball in the hole, which I really don't think about too much with a regular wedge, because it's more about just getting the ball in motion. I just see it removing drop-in strokes on my game right away.
When I took the Square Strike in my hand, felt the additional weight, and then hit a few of them, and then they started really getting straight, and I ended up putting one on the hole. I'll take that any day. Trying to be realistic, I think the Square Strike pitching wedge would save me somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 5 to 6 shots in a round of 18 holes. I would no longer be a bogey golfer.
Whether you struggle with chip yips or you don't chip or pitch the ball as close as you want, the Square Strike makes it easy to hit chips and pitches closer to the hole and get it up and in way more often. And those amazing results with the brand new Square Strike Wedge were possible because our club engineers specifically designed this club to be easy to use and almost impossible to chunk. Our new Square Strike Wedge has been developed to be used with a no-wrist, straight back and through putting-like pendulum stroke. So if you can putt, then you get more consistent chip shots using the Square Strike Wedge. Just swing it straight back and straight through like a putting stroke. It's that easy. And best of all, with the design of this wedge and the expanded pendulum putting-like stroke, with the Square Strike Wedge's heavier head and higher moment of inertia, or MOI, when you swing it, the club almost automatically stays square to your line and tracks right at your target. Hitting solid and square shots straight down your target line is effortless and easy. And the ACS2 low-friction anti-chunk slide ramp sole with a super forgiving, no-dig leading edge makes chunking chips and pitches something you'll never have to worry about again. After exhausting materials, the engineering team came up with a wedge that is created specifically to be used with a simple putting type stroke, which eliminates the need for perfect timing and takes the small twitchy muscles out of it. You know, those small twitchy muscles that give you the chipping yips? This completely unique combination of club and technique is what makes a square strike truly remarkable. This isn't just a bandage for bad form either. The pendulum style swing is something that you'll see being used on tour by pros like Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson, and Steve Stricker. This is simpler and more dependable method that gives you a better control and consistency in your chip shots. So why was the square strike wedge designed to use this kind of swing? Because this stroke uses your big muscles, not the small ones like the hands and wrists that tend to be a little twitchy. Big muscles are a lot more reliable under pressure, and eliminating wrist action makes your ball striking and your ball distance control a lot more consistent. In order to use this pendulum swing with your traditional thin-soled wedge, you still need the hand-eye coordination, precision timing, and the practice schedule of a tour pro. Because these clubs aren't designed for you, the recreational golfer. And they definitely weren't engineered to take full advantage of or even to be used in the putting-like stroke. That's because their lighter, less forgiving club heads tend to open and close as you swing, resulting in inconsistent contact and erratic and chunked or bladed chips. But with the combination of the advanced precision engineering of the square strike wedge and the straight back and straight through non-wrist pendulum putting-like stroke, you'll absolutely simplify and ramp up your short game. And we know that you might be wondering if the new square strike wedge is truly worth taking your current pitching or gap wedge out of your bag. Well, the answer is absolutely yes, because the square strike wedge was built to deliver more reliable chip and pitch shots for regular, everyday golfers like you. Chips and pitches that are easy and repeatable every time you pull the square strike wedge out of your bag.
Well, when trying to learn how to use the square strike, they told me to use it like a putter, even though it didn't look like it. But once I started to do that, it's that simple. It's just like using a putter. And I'm usually a pretty good putter, so that gave me a lot more confidence using that. The results were pretty good.
When I have the square strike in my hand, I don't have to think about hinge and hold. I don't have to think about anything to do with my hands other than keeping them quiet like I'm standing over a putt. And that's a really confident feeling.
Definitely as an amateur, that's the one, I mean, those are the two things you fear. Chunking the ball and not getting it on the green or hitting it thin and flying it over the green. So by using a putting stroke, you take out both of those options.
Well, with the square strike, I noticed that you have to get a little bit closer to the ball, like you would in a putting stroke. With the wedges, you have to be very precise, especially from a tight lie. All these shots with the square strike were from a tight lie, and the results were, in my opinion, extraordinary. I think I might have mishit one or two, but it feels solid. It feels good in my hands. You can feel the weight at the bottom, and it's easy to use. But the square strike is, I'm going to recommend the club because I think it's going to be a big improvement from little shots around the green, where with using your wedge, sometimes you have to open it, sometimes you have to hood it. There's a lot less thought process in setting up square and using a putting stroke, whether you're 50 feet away, 25 feet away, or 5 feet away.
Is it hard to learn the technique? No. Can you putt? Sure, everybody does. You go to miniature golf, you can putt. You go to miniature golf, you can use this club. It's that easy. It really is that simple. With my wedge, you have to kind of manipulate to make the shot. You know, you got to, short, chop, go down, turn it up, whatever. With the square strike, you just putt. I just use a putting stroke. Longer putting stroke for the longer one, shorter putting stroke for the shorter one, and that was it.
Well, with the square strike and the putting stroke, it didn't take really hardly any time at all to get used to that. And the other thing about it is, once you've gotten that, and I had some success out there, I know I'm going to go up with the same stroke on the next club. So it's a great transition.
For me, the square strike was much better than any wedge I've used because of the ease of use, because of the way it just flows through the grass, and because of the face just kept me aligned regardless of what I wanted to do. It made the ball go straight. And your chances of going in the hole are probably 50% better than you are with a normal wedge.
It was very easy to transfer the claw grip to the square strike because it has a very good feel for the head, weight in the head, and it felt like a putter. And when you think of it as a putter and just use that stroke, the results were very.
Today I had a chance to watch and help a handful of golfers try the new square strike wedge. The one thing that stood out is, once you took this golf club that was designed as a little bit heavier club, very square faced with a big flange that slides through the turf very nicely. These people were so much more comfortable chipping and pitching around the green. I think it was really important when we saw some of these players who really struggle with their short game, and they are so nervous and apprehensive about playing a chip shot or a pitch shot, particularly out of a lie that's either very tight or not very good. We talk so often about chipping and pitching, about how consistency is so important. Well, in this case, almost every single one of these players, their poor shots became better shots. And if you can improve your poor shots, you know your good ones are going to be good. If you can improve the poor ones, it's going to really be special. I think so often with the average player, they get all these wedges in their bag. They get their 60s and their 56s, and there's so much indecision on what club they should use. So then they decide, I'm just going to use my 60, which we saw out of a lot of players. And they're trying to do something different on every single shot, and this causes problems for them, where now we've got a club that you use the same technique over and over again, and if you do that, you're going to improve. And what they're able to do is to relax a little bit, take their putting stroke and just go ahead and make that stroke, let the ball get in the way of the momentum of the golf club, and all of a sudden they had great results. So it gave them much more confidence, and they had a lot more fun, and we could hardly get the club away from a couple of these people. They just wanted to keep hitting chip shots. So eventually they had to go play, so that was good. So I saw a tremendous amount of improvement. I think we've maybe hit on something that's going to really help the average player.
Well, I thought before I used the square strike that chipping was the best part of my game, but after about 8 chips, my average distance with my wedge was 12 feet. With the square strike, it was 6 feet. So I was chipping the ball much closer to the hole. My initial thought was a little bit gimmicky, but that's just me. It takes a little bit getting used to. You can't use a chipping stroke, and when I practiced with it for 30 seconds, I was using a chipping stroke, and the results were still better than my wedge. But after a little bit of instruction, you just have to get used to the stroke, and more of a putting stroke as opposed to a chipping stroke, and the results speak for themselves. You cannot hit this club fat. You will never chunk a ball, and that's important, especially for the middle handicaps and the higher handicaps. So I think it's a game improvement club, but even for a 7 handicap, I'm going to get one. When I was testing the square strike, and I mishit one and chunked it somewhat, but still got a good result. If I would have hit that same shot with my lob wedge, probably been 15 feet shorter and probably a little bit off to the left. But the square strike is, I'm going to recommend the club, because I think it's going to be a big improvement from little shots around the green, where with using your wedge, sometimes you have to open it, sometimes you have to hood it. There's a lot less thought process in setting up square and using a putting stroke, whether you're 50 feet away, 25 feet away, or 5 feet away. But there's less to think about with this club as opposed to a wedge, especially off a tight lie. It's a putting stroke, true and true. All you have to do is measure the distance back to go 50 feet or 30 feet or 20 feet. So simplicity, I think you guys got it right on the mark from that perspective. There was none to little face rotation, and one time I caused it. So it wasn't the club, but again, it feels good in my hands. I like the weight at the bottom. If you get the technique and use that putting stroke, you're gonna get good results. It's not marketing hype. You cannot chunk this club. I tried on the practice green. I tried to chunk it, and the result was still pretty good. So with a wedge, you chunk a wedge, you know what happens. With this, it eliminates chunking 99.9%, if not 100%. Bottom line, this square strike wedge is going to go in my bag for sure, and I'm sure some of the guys at the club are going to look at it, want to play with it, and probably get one too. I think it's a great asset to your bag, and short shots around the green on a tight lie, can't beat it.
The most difficult overall part of my game is my short game, and I'm working hard on the putting, but the chipping is the part that gives me the nervies when I'm around the green. Initially, when I was handed the square strike, I thought, this is weird, it's heavy. But once I started to swing with it, it reminded me more of a putter, and therefore the stroke seemed a lot easier than a normal wedge. It was a very confident, very comfortable feel of just putting it. And I don't have to worry what's going to happen. I mean, the worst is it might roll out a little long. I can live with that. The anti-chunks sole of this club is what it says it is. It is an anti-chunk. I think if I even tried to chunk it, I couldn't have. Whereas my own club, oh boy, I can chunk that without being nasty. But this one I can feel when I hold it, that's not going to happen. And that's a really good feeling when you're standing around the green. When I have my own 60-degree wedge, it's, you know, I've probably watched every video on YouTube on lessons, and the hinge and hold has been the most helpful. When I have the square strike in my hand, I don't have to think about hinge and hold. I don't have to think about anything to do with my hands other than keeping them quiet like I'm standing over a putt. And that's a really confident feeling. Well, I think it's wonderful that a company has come up with a club that I don't have to go out for hours and practice and at my age hurt my back being in this position all the time. Having a club that I can just pull out of my bag like another putter, but it's heavier and I just swing like this. I don't have to spend hours at the range. I can just go out and enjoy my social golf. It's wonderful. For me, the square strike is a perfect addition for my short game in my bag to give me the confidence I've been lacking in the short part of my game.
Well, the short game is one of my bigger problems. I don't hit the ball as far as I used to, and so therefore I have to be able to get close to the pin some other way. And pitching and putting has been a drawback. Putting primarily because I can hardly ever get it close enough for a one putt with any kind of degree of confidence. I thought the square strike was different from what I'm used to holding. It was a little more weight to it. And after hitting it a few times, I equated that weight with confidence and therefore a little more confidence in getting the thing closer to the hole. Compared to my wedge, it was much more stable. Again, I think the weight, but also just the feel of it. I didn't think I was going to chunk it very often. The results of the pitches were quite a bit better than what I'm accustomed to. My wedge, I had a few chunks, not unusual for me. And they didn't always go in a straight line. When I took the square strike in my hand and then hit a few of them, and then they started really getting straight, and I ended up putting one on the hole. I'll take that any day. That's it. That's a wrap. I'm sold. It goes through the grass. There was no stopping, or you know, I think when I chunk, I have a tendency to feel that and just stop. And with my old pitching wedge, that's not. My results are not consistent. This seems to go right through. A lot of confidence in that.
Perfect.
With the square strike, it was versatile. I could do both. I did long ones, I did shorter ones, I did short ones. And the result was pretty much the same. With the square strike and the putting stroke, it didn't take really hardly any time at all to get used to that. Then the other thing about it is, once you've gotten that, and I had some success out there, I know I'm going to go up with the same stroke on the next club. So it's a great transition. I think that the folks that are designing the square strike have done the right thing. There are certainly more recreational golfers than there are pros. And we're all out here to have fun, at least on the surface. And we all know we want to win. And I think this is gonna help me. I couldn't believe how the square strike gave me the confidence that I think I'm going to need to make that next putt, if in fact the shot doesn't go in the first place. Trying to be realistic, I think the square strike pitching wedge would save me somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 5 to 6 shots in a round of 18 holes. I would no longer be a bogey golfer. Compared with the wedges that I have, it was a lot easier, a lot simpler, and almost like day and night. I'll take the new one, the square strike.
So if you're a golfer who's looking for peak performance out of your clubs and who's craving a solution to making chipping and pitching a cinch, then look no further. Because with the brand new square strike wedge and its recreational golfer focused design that eliminates chunk chips and the putting-like stroke method that utilizes your larger muscles and simplifies your swing, you will develop a short game that you can be proud of. A short game that becomes the envy of all your buddies. In fact, we're so sure that the brand new square strike wedge will find a permanent home in your bag that we guarantee